Hey everyone. What a great question being asked by Tristan Hopper, contributor to the National Post. This in reference to a headline article. Why is it so impossible to fire a government employee? Despite being in jail for attempted murder, Constable James Forcillo has not been fired from the Toronto Police. What a great question, right? And I've already dealt with this particular topic a few times in the past. My most recent one was in regards to the fact that there was over the last so many years, there's been 462 murders or deaths that came as a result of police interactions with the public. And out of those 462 examples, 406 of them were given a free pass. No charges laid. Everything was on the up and up, right? And there were two of them that weren't. But you know what? Those two, the only reason why there wasn't a final analysis on those two cases, on those two incidents, is because they're still before the courts. And one of them is in regards to this James Forcillo. Although now an appeals court has rejected his claim that he wanted to have his conviction overturned. So, of course, he can still appeal to a higher court, a higher authority. So that's still up in the air at this point. But it seems that James Forcillo is actually going to be the first cop in Canada that is actually going to be convicted criminally under the law for killing that Sammy Yatim. I mean, you got to know, you got to suspect, you got to think that if it wasn't for the fact that there was video evidence that showed, he shot, bang, 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 3 bullets into that young man that was on a streetcar all by himself with up to a dozen officers out there. So obviously it was the video footage that basically condemned the man, right? But even with that video footage, with that fucking proof, and that was another thing too. After the 3 initial shots, there was a slight pause of hesitation. Then he shot 6 more rounds into that young man, that young 18-year-old. So, that was just blatant fucking murder. And there would be no other reason, there'd be no excuses for anyone outside of being part of the ruling class, right? The mindless enforcers for the state. Any one of us that, if we were not, like I say, if we didn't have a badge, right, and we weren't part of the state, if you did that exact same thing to another human being, well, you would be considered a murderer. That's just a truth. That's just a factual statement. So, yeah, cops, just by sheer fact that they're, part of the connected part of the ruling class, the enforcers of the ruling class, yeah, they get off scot-free time and time again for things that you or I or any other normal human being would have to suffer tremendously for, because they would be considered or deemed a criminal act. But not only, in regards to this article, not only is James Forcillo still having the ability to go through appeals process, and I'll just preface before I get into the actual particulars of this article, but he also, that whole time when he was going through the court processes, he was never fired, and he was placed on, paid leave, whatever they call it. That's the term they use, is paid leave. So he was on paid vacation for all that time, for all the years leading up to the actual case. The only time that his paycheck was taken away from him was when he was actually finally convicted of a crime. But did he get fired? No. He's actually still gainfully employed through the Toronto Police. So, maybe when he's done, and he got a 6-year sentence, but if you think about how it's done in Canada, it could be maybe 1 day served equals 3 days of the actual punishment. So he may very well only serve 2 years. And I mean, in basically what would be considered for a cop, like club fed kind of circumstances or situation. He's not going to be placed in the general population, because he would get fucked up pretty hardcore if he was. So he's going to be protected. He's still going to have everything paid for and provided to him, just like he has learned to expect on his job as an enforcer of the state. Well, the state is still going to force the taxpayers to subsidize him, even while he's supposedly being punished, right, for killing this 18-year-old young man. But I mean, just the sheer fact that, yeah, they haven't even fired a man that has killed and been proven in a court of law that he actually killed another human being needlessly. But he still has his job that he could go back to. And that's what this article is referencing. Toronto Police Constable James Fursillo is currently serving 6 years in jail for the 2013 shooting death of Sammy Yatim. This week, an Ontario court dismissed Fursillo's appeal. Despite all of this, Fursillo is still a Toronto police officer. He has been suspended without pay, but he hasn't been fired. If Fursillo worked at a rail yard or an oil drilling platform, there would be no question that going to prison for a violent crime would result in immediate dismissal. But Fursillo keeps his badge until he's had his case put before a disciplinary hearing that Toronto police haven't yet convened. Canadians are correct to assume that it is almost impossible to fire a public employee, even if that employee was found guilty of a violent criminal offense while on duty. This story isn't trying to pick on cops, bureaucrats, teachers, or other public servants. Nevertheless, below are a few reasons why those fields are so consistently unable to terminate incompetent and even dangerous employees. Well, you might not want to, Tristan, but I will do it for you. So you do your article, and I'll put forward my own particular opinion or narrative regarding this stuff. The data doesn't lie. Basically, nobody in government gets fired. A 2010 federal report provided a rare window into the number of federal employees who get fired each year. Over a 10-year period starting in 1999, an average of 127 employees per year were subject to a dismissal, which indicates that they were specifically fired instead of being laid off. For context, by the end of that period, the federal public service was employing more than 250,000 people. In one particularly notable year, 2000, only 77 of the country's 211,925 federal workers were fired, a rate of only 0.036%. Usually it has to be so outrageous that it's difficult not to deal with it. Employees show up drunk or aren't showing up, said Donald Savoy, an expert in public administration at Université de Moncton. In a 2016 report, the right-leaning Fraser Institute dug up Statistics Canada data and concluded that private sector employees are fired at a rate 7 times higher than their government counterparts. There are few incentives to remove a bad employee. Consider the case of an Ontario principal who wants to fire an incompetent teacher. I know of principals, a very small few, who have documented and dismissed an incompetent teacher. Most would not do it twice. Barry Bennett, a teacher development researcher at the University of Toronto, wrote in an email, "It's an all-consuming task to fire a public employee, and there are few incentives to do it. No bonuses, no praise from superiors, and no increases to operational budgets. Often, the easier option is simply to shuffle an underperforming employee somewhere where they will do the least damage. They just go in a corner and hide and become demoralized and bitter and lose their soul in many ways. But they survive," said Donald Savoy. Public sector unions are particularly aggressive at protecting positions. Howard Levitt is a leading Canadian employment lawyer. He told the National Post he has struck many deals with private sector unions that negotiated layoffs in exchange for reasonable buyout packages. But the public sector union is a different animal. A precognition is that they have jobs for life, Levitt said. And indeed, given the statistics, the precognition is often correct. As a result, union representatives can hit the negotiating table confident in the knowledge that they never have to consider the possibility of seeing a member terminated. Severance is never an option, said Levitt. I mean, think about what that represents, folks. I mean, think about this. This is just one underlying aspect, one very important fundamental area where, think about you and I, those of us in the private sector that are paying for the salaries of all these entitled bureaucrats, these statists. You know, think about what incentive does in your own personal life, in your own personal circumstances, in your family life, in your family values, in your community lives, and the values that your community holds, or any area in your fucking, like I say, in your life at all. Incentives matter, and when you destroy proper incentives and you allow this shit to happen, well, no wonder no wonder the government that's grown so giant and bureaucratic and so authoritarian and totalitarian in its state at this point. Well, that's just a direct consequence of this exact kind of shit. You know, when you create an area where the most vile, despicable, and authoritarian among us can congregate to, and they can't even be fired for their immorality, their discrepancies, or their authoritarianism, or their inabilities, or their incompetence. I mean, come on. If criminals of any sort, or evil or vile people of any sort know that, oh, look at this. There's this one place. Most places I can't go there and do what I want to do and get away with it. But hey, there's this one place called being a government employee where I can be as vile and despicable and evil as I want, but as long as I just learn to play their little games and support my particular political tribe or team, then look it, I'll get the benefit of the doubt all the time and forever, until the day, you know, I get my gold-plated pension and finally leave the public sector workforce. Well, is there any question? Why is there any question? Why are there any doubts anymore as to why, when you go out to deal with fucking people in the public sector, why they treat you like a second-class citizen and feel like they're superior and your authority somehow? Instead of being an actual public servant, you know how they actually genuinely act there today. You know, they think that they're your fucking owners. They're your boss. In reality, you're the one paying their paycheck. So, you know, and under any normal circumstance, if you're the one paying someone's paycheck, you're the fucking boss, right? But like I say, when it comes to the government, everything's flipped upside down. So they, no matter what, they feel so entitled, and that's why I've experienced this myself. Trust me. And they'll fuck with you. Like, it seems like never-endingly. Like, they'll just do whatever and they'll say whatever. They'll regurgitate fucking policy or talking points, and they don't get. You can point out like, hey, that doesn't make any sense. They'll be like, hey, that's policy. You know, that's the way it is. And you know, if you don't like it, fuck you. That's what they're basically saying under their breath. But they won't. Most of them won't say that to you. You know, during an actual conversation, they won't let that particular cat out of the bag. But that's just the reality of the facts. But I mean, yeah, the sheer fact, that's just getting into some other areas. But I mean, yeah, once again, back up to the original point of this whole article is James Fasillo, a fucking guy that killed another human being and was on paid leave, and all paid for you by, you know, the taxpayer, the wage slaves, the wage serfs in Canada. You're paying for all this shit. All of it. Why are you not outraged? I'm fucking, like I say, I'm baffled on a continual and ongoing basis. Like, what? Damn, are there that many people in Canada that are entitled that they really don't care about this shit anymore? Are you all really that fucking entitled that you don't care about anything anymore? And like I said, well, what I'll do once again in this video, I'll preface that I'm not necessarily trying to say this to you, the people that, you know, watch my videos on a regular basis. I get you understand what I'm trying to say, but I'm going to say it one more time, folks. I'm saying what I got to say because I really do. I really, really, really do hope that you will share my video with people that really need to hear this. Because if you're only consuming it for yourself, if you're only consuming when I'm doing my little finger wagging shit, when I'm trying to point out the bullshit, hypocrisy, and the immorality of all this stuff, is if you're not one of those people that, then, like, I'm just kind of preaching to the choir here. I really need you to share my video and this stuff so the people in your life, and I know you have people in your life that need to hear what I've got to say. You need to share with them. Stop fucking being so scared of, oh, I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to get them mad at me. Well, then then accept the fact that why do you even pay attention to my videos then? Why do you even listen to my shit? You're not helping anything by you digesting or consuming what I got to say if you're not willing to share it with anyone else. Right? It's not really going to benefit you a whole lot unless, like I said, unless you're ignorant to these kind of facts, to this kind of reality yourself, then you are benefited. But if you already know what I'm saying, you personally aren't benefiting. I'm doing these videos so that you will show other people that need to learn and benefit from this knowledge. And if you aren't doing so, well, we're not going to get anywhere, folks. We're never going to get anywhere. We're just fucking circle jerking or playing in a fucking echo chamber. So I don't know, and I don't care for that shit. I really don't care to continue to appeal or repeat myself to people that already understand the kind of stuff I'm saying. Which is why when I look out there and I see that, yep, my channel's not growing much, it's just, you're just consuming my stuff without actually sharing. And you know what? I do this stuff for free. So you can share it, you know, and I'm saying you can share my stuff for free. It might take a few seconds out of your day. I get that. And if that's an insurmountable task for you, then you must have a really, really difficult and fucking busy life if you can actually watch and consume my videos, but you can't take those few seconds out of your day or out of your time to share them with people that really need to listen. Or once again, you're just one of those people that don't want to be controversial in any way or don't want to rock the boat. And if that's the case, you're not fucking helping anybody. You're not helping me, you're not helping yourself, and you're not helping anyone else that you think needs to learn some of these things because you're not willing to share this information. You're not willing to speak those hard truths, or at least allow me to speak my hard truth and you share it to them. Anyways, I'll post a link to this article in the description of the video below. But yeah, I mean, think about it, folks. The public sector today, while the bureaucratic, the deep state, they're a large cohort. I mean, what are they now? 4.1 million Canadians. Of the adult age Canadians in Canada that are in that working age demographic, right? Let's say, 18 to 65, what, 1 in 5, maybe 1 in 4, and then if you take into account all the other areas, and I've pointed this out in the past too, like, whether it's the crony corporations or, the ones that have been bailed out, or the banksters, or people on welfare, or disability, or compensation. I mean, wow, the amount of people that live on the public dole, on that forced income or wealth redistribution, I mean, it's getting to the point now where, yeah, it is a representation of the majority of the population, I would imagine at this point. Directly or indirectly, if you take that all, the culmination of it all, and put it into a pile, like I say, I'd say you're pretty close to the precipice where it's not long, folks, because once you get to a certain point where more people are on the dole than those that provide the dole, that's just a mathematic, that's just a reality statement that it's not going to last forever. It can't last forever. It never has lasted forever. All these utopian concepts where everybody could just socially and economically enslave each other and that'll work out great, it's never worked out at any point, at any junction. No country around the world has ever tried to go into this full-on collective socialist or communist or fascist type model. None of them have ever worked out to be successful or prosperous or benefit the people properly, whether it's social or economic liberty. Nope, it's usually the exact opposite. That's why we got to start getting away from this stuff and getting back to respecting and promoting individual liberty and freedoms. It's Canadian Libertarian. I love liberty.